Thank you, Jason. The Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal has partnered with BestPrep for more than 15 years. We are thrilled for the opportunity to provide leadership on the BestPrep Board of Directors, as well as support their events through in-kind promotions. I am honored to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, Justice Alan Page. While Justice Page is not originally from Minnesota, I believe we can claim him as a Minnesota treasure. He first burst onto the scenes as a game-changing defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings and went to serve more than 20 years as an Associate Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. But his commitment to the community service may be his most impressive accomplishment. For 30 years, the Page Education Foundation has provided $14 million in grants to 6,750 Page Scholars. In return, Page Scholars commit to serving as mentors to younger students. Since 1988, more than 40,000 Minnesota children have been mentored by Page Scholars. When you total up the accomplishments, including authoring 3 children's books with his daughter, Cammie Page, Justice Page's story has been truly remarkable. A complete bio can be found in your program booklet. We are delighted tonight to present each one of our guests with a copy of All Rise, the biography of Justice Page. A special thank you to Thomson Reuters for printing the book for us as an in-kind donation. And now, to provide tonight's keynote address, tomorrow's leaders, Why Character Matters, please help me give a warm welcome to the stage, Justice Alan Page.
Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you all for your warm welcome. I was a little confused when I got here. I didn't know which microphone to go to, so I made an executive decision and chose this one. Not sure it was the right one, but we'll make it work. I am honored to be a part of this evening's program, given BestPrep's focus on improving the lives of young people through financial literacy, business literacy, and career literacy. And my passion for ensuring that all children have the opportunity to learn it. To the young people here recognized for their essays, I say congratulations. What an incredible experience to be recognized for putting your thoughts onto the written page. And I think that's a powerful experience, and particularly given the subject matter of the essays. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished. Now, when I was your age, I was afraid to write. I was afraid that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't good at it, and that I wasn't smart enough and would be laughed at and ridiculed. Fortunately, I got over the fear, and along the way came to love the process of working with words. One other thought for the young people here this evening. When I was your age, it would not have occurred to me that one day I might have accomplished all the things that I have. But like the path that brought me to this moment, the path that each of you take will provide an opportunity for you to accomplish that which you would never have dreamed possible. The key to whatever success I've had has been, can be found in an unwillingness to be satisfied with playing to the level of the competition, a willingness to push beyond my self-perceived limitations and others' low expectations, and a willingness to be involved in the community around me. Those same qualities can be the key to your future success. Now, I believe that children are the future, and that future is mostly about hope. Sadly, in my work as a judge, I saw many young people who engaged in criminal and other antisocial behavior. Now, some of those young people had no moral compass, but many, indeed too many, had simply lost hope. That loss of hope was based, at least in part, on an education system that they knew had failed them. A review of the record from their trials involved a seemingly common denominator. Reading their testimony and witness statements, it was clear that they had never learned to think critically. Their reasoning was always fractured and scattered. For them, 1 and 1 never quite added up to 2. Given their inability to think critically, we should not be surprised that they ran afoul of the law or that they had lost hope. Having lost hope, they had nothing left to lose. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "There is nothing more dangerous than to build a society with a large segment of people in that society who feel they have no stake in it, who feel they have nothing to lose. People who have a stake in their society protect that society, but when they don't have it, they unconsciously want to destroy it." A critical tool for creating hope and giving young people a stake in society is education. Certainly to the extent that I've had success, whether on the athletic field, in the law, or elsewhere, the education I received along the way played an important role. Education put me in the position to be prepared and be focused. In a sense, it has allowed me to keep my eye on the ball, so to speak. And speaking of preparation, as I prepared for this evening's remarks, I was reminded of a law school experience I had where I learned preparation's true importance. In my first-year contracts class, instead of lecturing, the professor liked using the Socratic method, which you may know entails asking questions of those who are under-enlightened to help lead them to enlightenment, and includes a little intimidation along the way. I still get a little queasy when I think back on the day that the professor had one of the guys in the class in tears. Now, even though I always came to class relatively well prepared and had performed as a football player in front of hundreds of thousands of people, I was terrified of being called on. Making myself small and inconspicuous, however, was not one of the choices. So what could I do? Well, after surviving the first few days without being called on, I noticed that the professor only called on people who looked like they were afraid, and he never called on people who raised their hands. So I started raising my hand. And for a while, that tactic was rewarded. But finally, one day I raised my hand, and as luck would have it, lightning struck. He called on me. Without thinking, I stood up to answer the question, and my mind went blank. And it stayed blank. As I scrambled for a cohesive thought, I had momentary empathy for all those quarterbacks I'd been chasing for a living. But then Somehow it hit me. I had to say something. Anything was better than silence. So I started speaking, and whatever I said must have been okay. But the lessons I learned were these. First, that preparation is critical to success. And while preparation in that context means coming to class with your assignments done, it also means being able to size up a situation and respond accordingly and appropriately. Second, I learned that sometimes we create our own greatest obstacles, that our fears, rather than the actual situation, is what causes us to stumble. Third, and maybe most important of all, I learned that when our fears cause us to stumble, good preparation will help us pick ourselves up. For there to be a better future, it is not enough to focus solely on educational development. We must also be consciously involved with character development. In that regard, I have a great deal of concern for the future, particularly the future of our democracy. That concern has to do with what I perceive to be a decline in our character, individually and collectively. Why this concern? Because when I look around, I see excessive greed and a lack of civility, if not aggressive incivility. I see athletes who seem more interested in taunting or showing up their opponent than in playing the game. Under the guise of opposing political correctness, I see people who seem to relish in rude and abusive behavior, even though opposing political correctness does not require one to be rude or abusive. I also see political leaders who appear to see no problem with making demonstrably false statements on a regular basis. All of this in plain view of young and impressionable children. The message those children get is, well, if it's okay for our leaders to act this way, it must be okay for me to do the same. While each of these examples is problematic, when our leaders send the message to children that lying is okay, that being rude and abusive is okay, we are headed for serious trouble. Clearly, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and it is fair to have a debate about the reasonable inferences to be drawn from the facts, whatever they may be. But none of us are entitled to our own facts. We cannot allow lying to become normalized. We must oppose it with all the energy we can muster. Lying strikes at the heart of trust, and without trust, we have nothing. We have the power to change the course of our character. Exercise of that power must be through both our words and our actions. The American Heritage Dictionary defines character as moral or ethical strength, integrity, fortitude. In a sense, character is who we are at our very core. It's what determines what we believe and how we choose to respond to any given situation. Good character is not something that we are born with, nor does it develop automatically. It must be consciously developed. Nor is it something that is static, whether we're 50 or 15, 5 or 75, a corporate leader a BestPrep supporter, volunteer, or student, or a former Supreme Court justice, we will be forced to reevaluate and renew our character again and again. People of character take responsibility for who they are and for what they do. To resist the pressures and temptations that seduce us to make the easy choices rather than the right choices. To be a person of character takes a strong person. Now, I don't mean strong in the physical sense, for physical strength has nothing to do with character. I do mean strong in the sense of believing that each one of us has an obligation to act in ways that builds rather than diminishes our character and the character of those around us, especially the children around us. That means we must be honest and trustworthy, saying what we mean and meaning what we say. It means keeping our promises, playing fairly, telling the truth, making decisions with others in mind, always treating people with respect, and respecting ourselves. It means working to figure out the difference between right and wrong, and then doing what is right. The fact that I was once considered to be a great football player, or that I am a former Supreme Court justice, doesn't mean by itself that I am a man of good character. The fact that the color of my skin may be different from yours doesn't mean that I am not a man of good character. The fact that your language or religion may be different from mine doesn't make either one of our characters better or worse. The outward differences which identify us as individuals do not define the content of our character. That will be defined on an ongoing basis by how we act, especially how we act when no one else is watching. Let me close with these thoughts. We, all of us here this evening, can change the future when we put our hearts, our mind, and our bodies to the task of ensuring educational opportunity and positive character development. We can bend the arc of history towards hope, opportunity, and a more just world. That is the challenge we face. Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
They're on their feet, Justice Page. Pretty good.
Thank you.
All right, I want to bring Doug Baker on stage now to join Justice Page because we want to continue the conversation. Doug Baker is the chairman and CEO of Ecolab. Joined the company in 1989, rapidly rose through the ranks before becoming the president and chief executive officer in 2004. In 2006, he also became chairman of the board. Doug is so active in the community. He serves on the board of Target, U.S. Bancorp. He's the trustee emeritus of the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation. I spend a lot of time in restaurant kitchens for my other job as food critic, and see Ecolab all over the place in every restaurant kitchen. Leaving today, I think we're all going to hand sanitize with some Ecolab products, so that'll be nice. Doug's also part of the Super Bowl committee. I'm not going to say everything that Doug does, because let's get to the conversation. So where is he? Come on out, Doug.
That's great. Thank you. Right here?
Right there. You're good. Wherever you guys want to sit, it's all good.
Is this the hot seat?
That's the hot seat.
That's a hot seat.
That's right. You guys are, you know, whenever you talk about character, and certainly with the the events going on around us. I talk about it every morning on TV. It's a little, I will say though, and I wonder your thoughts on this. Obviously things are escalated now because of politics in this country, but I've been a journalist for more than 20 years, and character is something that we've covered in every presidential administration. It seems like it's always the ultimate judge of a human being isn't, Doug, their success in sports or in business. What it ultimately comes down to, and I know this because I was explaining to my 12-year-old in Washington, D.C. as we talked through some of the complicated legacies of various presidential administrations. Character is what ultimately you're judged on, don't you think?
I do. I mean, ultimately. So I say this often, I saw King Tut, had a lot of gold, he was still dead. You're not going to take it with you.
Right.
So ultimately, what difference are you going to make on this earth? And character, and I thought it was incredibly well described by Justice Page during the talk, is, I think, ultimately what we'll be judged upon, because it will guide our actions, it will guide the difference we make, it'll guide the impact we have on friends, communities, et cetera. And without it, I don't know how you can lead.
You know, in the end, you have to get up every morning and look at yourself in the mirror. And I would think it would be terribly difficult to, on a daily basis, look at yourself and have that conversation about who am I?
Yeah.
And what am I doing that or to influence others, that will influence others. Because even when you're doing things not to influence, you will have some influence.
Both of you guys, obviously we know about your athletic career. Doug, I know you're a hockey player. You played a little college hockey too, right?
Yeah, I would have to give the nod here for that.
I mean, yeah.
I think I was MVP of my
Fame?
sixth grade.
Sixth grade Hall of Fame?
Team. I've got a little trophy.
Pee Wee Hockey Hall of Fame, Edina, maybe?
not quite, yeah,
Southwest
exactly.
Minneapolis, yeah. You know, we were talking at dinner a little bit about how the culture of youth sports today is so all in, where you have to be involved in one sport so early. Do you think, does athletics, whether it's organized or whether you're playing pickup sports with friends, does it still teach those character lessons, you think?
Not when you carry it to the extremes.
Yeah.
And not everybody is out there carrying it to the extremes.
A lot of people, though.
But when you're a 10-year-old and you're pushed to win at all costs, I think the perspective is a little warped.
Yeah. This is our fault as parents, a little bit, do you think?
It's not the kids out there
Yeah. Kids are the same.
in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those of us who are the adults.
Are you a yeller on the sideline back when your kids were 10 and 12?
Oh, absolutely. I try to berate the coach, the refs, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place for character, and then you got to leave it at home.
Different.
I mean,
You're like, yeah.
No.
I'm that guy on TV. Make the call, ref.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I say I behaved fine. But I do think it's gone too far. And on the other hand, I think Title IX and the resultant women's athletics has been a huge plus. Because for many years, I mean, when I grew up, there really weren't the same opportunities for women to take part in athletics, take part in teams. And so I think that's been a very positive move.
Well, that's been an incredibly positive move. I mean, Diane and I have been married for 44 years. When she was growing up, there was nothing.
Right.
My youngest daughter, my co-author, has a national championship ring from the University of Notre Dame soccer program.
Wow.
I happen to have a national championship ring from the University of Notre Dame. So that's an opportunity that in the past she wouldn't have had.
Sure.
And the growth and the being involved in athletics. I mean, we had a rule in our house that all of our children had to go out for some sport. We didn't care what it was. We didn't care how you performed. You had to participate. And that participation is, I think, very important for growth and development. But it's when we get to these extremes. And quite frankly, I don't understand it because not every kid is going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly.
It just isn't going to happen.
Right. Well, in both of you, though, you both did sports. You excelled at an extremely high level. But your impact on this world isn't because of your athletic career. It's your work as a Supreme Court justice and really the Page Foundation, I think. The work that you've done there, that will be years from now when people talk about Alan Page. It's that.
Well, when I was on the court, we occasionally, we base our decisions on precedent, and you go back and look at cases from the past. We were looking at, on occasion, at cases from the 1860s. To think that the work that I did while I was on the court, somebody 150 years from now will be using that to set the course of society, that's a little intimidating and a little scary, but far more impact. And hopefully those 6,500 plus Page scholars who we've had over the last 30 years, their impact, the people that they have touched,
and the ripple effect, goes out is going to be incredible.
Far more important than anything I did on the athletic field, and that is not to suggest that I didn't do anything important there.
No, you kicked some ass, for sure. Let's be realistic here, right? Doug, part of what BestPrep is about is this intersection of young people in business. I wonder, when we talk about character, I think sometimes for young people it can feel a little bit like, all right, like, yes, we know that character matters, but when it comes down to hiring and getting ahead, it's a win-at-all-cost culture in the corporate world as well. When it comes down to reality of the hiring, how does character influence who you hire, who you promote, those kind of things?
Well, what we look for, of course, are talented people, but we also want talented people with ambition, but the right ambition. And that's that they define winning as a team. That they want to put a thumbprint on the business, but they want to do it for the betterment of the team, not just simply self-promotion or others.
Yeah.
And then this win at all cost, that just isn't a sustainable model. It just doesn't work. And at the end of the day, companies have to gain a right to operate from society. You have to keep that right to operate. You've got to be a good citizen, good community neighbor. You have to perform to the point that your customers will keep sending you money. Okay. Otherwise, you don't keep your doors open. And the way you do that is you put their interests ahead of yours. And if you get that equation wrong over a long period of time, you're not going to be around. So we're really looking for people who, one, want to join a company, join a team, and want to learn. So our belief is, we're all given great talents, and you can decide where those talents come from. I choose to believe they come from God. That's my own personal. And our responsibility is to, I think, maximize those talents. That's our gift back. And we have a responsibility as a company, as people. How do you develop yourself, and how do you become a better person? And I think the character conversation you just had is exactly right. How do you aim to be who you want to be on your best day and make that your average day, and then change it again? And so that just takes continual self-analysis, looking at yourself. I make all kinds of mistakes. I don't like making them. I don't like admitting it, but I have to learn to do it, or I can't get any better.
Well, and you're an example, too. You were an English major, right, in college?
I was.
And you had a science company.
Yeah, well, yeah. This is an ongoing joke, I'm sure, in the company, but they don't all tell me, right? So, yeah, I like to say if I can explain it, everybody can understand it. But,
Right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about being a lifelong learner, about being curious, about being a leader with integrity. That whether your business is science or whether you're running a nonprofit foundation, whatever the case may be, Alan, don't you think?
Or practicing law.
Or practicing law. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately.
And quite frankly, whether you're playing football as a professional. Mm-hmm. The character doesn't end at the 10-yard line. In fact, that's where it begins.
Right.
Right. Yeah, those last 10 yards to get across the finish line, that is really where you show what you've got and what you're made of. Yeah. When you guys look at this issue of character, we don't have a character class in school. Depending on what school you're going, depending on what teacher you have or what school, maybe you want one or maybe you don't want them teaching it there. I worry that my kids learn a lot about character on the bus, school bus. Nothing good happens on the school bus, I'll tell you that much. All the bad words that my kids speak, they sure did not learn that.
Exactly.
Certainly not. Must be the bus. Who teaches this? Because the easy answer is parents, but is there a larger responsibility? Where else can we go to pass these lessons on?
Well, the reality is that we're influenced by those who are around us, those we can reach out and touch. And so it is parents. It is the community. It is the schools. And just because you don't have a character class doesn't mean that character education and development can't be going on.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, we have 3 kids. Our youngest is a senior in college. So so far I think we've done just fine. Yeah. She's a great person. And her conversation, we were just at a parents' weekend this weekend. It's our last, but the conversation at brunch before we left was really about the signaling and the character signaling that's going on in this country right now.
Sure.
And a lot of the conversation you just had, and how in many ways demoralizing it is. So we're influenced by a lot of things. I would also say there's a lot of positive. I certainly had a number of people I can look back to today who set unbelievable examples. I don't even think I appreciated them at the time, but you grow to appreciate them because you kind of grow and can understand the lessons that you learned.
It's true. I didn't realize what an influence my 6th grade teacher, for example, was on my life till years later. But I distinctly remember a time where he took me out of school, sat me down on the stoop. You know, today there's probably be a news story, right? The teacher grabbed the kid. But I was freaking out about grades. I was getting a B, which was a crisis for me at the time. I was quite the perfectionist. Things have changed. 20 years in local news has gotten that out of my system. But he told me how, basically, he kind of shook me out of this stupor of being obsessed with one thing and tried to give me a broader picture that there are more important things, and it's being a well-rounded total person, which I didn't, of course, in 6th grade. I'm sure I was mad that he embarrassed me and pulled me out of school, but he was right. He was right. Well, Justice Page, just our final question. When you look ahead, and we have a lot of young people in this room, and do you have you know, I think we were left, from Doug, kind of optimistic. You look at this generation and think, you know, yes, there are obstacles with maybe the examples we have right now in our country, but there's also great promise. I guess, what advice would you have, and what's your outlook looking forward?
Oh, I am very hopeful when I see students. I mean, I spend a lot of time in schools talking with young people. And the energy, the clarity with which they think, their curiosity, their sense of hope for the future, that energizes me. That's what keeps me going. We've had over 6,500 paid scholars. They give me hope. You know, as you say, we hear about and read about and see all of the negative things, but as best I can tell, there are far more positive things going on. But those of us who are the adults in the room, now that we've gotten to be the adults in the room, have to make sure that we don't let that slip away, that we don't let I'm searching for the word, I'm not finding it, but let those who would take us down the path of bad character, we can't afford to allow them to win.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that are responsible through our actions and through our words, but mostly through our actions.
I think that's a good place to end it. Thank you both so much. This was really great. Justice Page.
Thank you.
Doug, thank you guys. Really great.
It's an honor.